Now, let's look forward, should we? Because it is a new year. So hopefully it's not going to be the same gloomy prognosis that dominated 2022. Let's hope not. Keep our fingers crossed. What are the trends and the tech, perhaps, that's going to define the coming 12 months? Well, when you want to know about what's coming up, no one better to talk to than Futurist Andrew Eborn, who's here. Good afternoon.
You were going to say good morning, weren't you? I know, it's a funny time of the day for both of us, which we love. It's going to be good.
Yeah, well, it makes a change.
It does make a change,
and we need a change.
Oh, boy, do we need a change. We've had a rotten 2022. FU 22 is what I think they said. But my goodness me, it's 23. And it's going to be a really exciting stage. And we've got the obvious conflicts which we should address as well. What's going to happen in Ukraine, what might happen with China, and obviously the whole eating or heating debacle. But some of the most exciting developments, which is my main sort of focus, is about what's happening in robotics, in AI, in medicine, and the tremendous advances that are happening there.
Well, that all sounds very positive. So what are we going to see?
Well, where do you want to start? Should we start with the war in Ukraine?
Well, we better had, because obviously because that is influencing pretty much everything.
Yeah, and well, basically, as I predicted, actually, and with you, we were talking about the timing of when Putin was going to invade. It was a surprise to nobody. What people were questioning is when they were going to do it. And what I was saying is that it won't happen until after the Beijing Olympics, because he obviously didn't want to upset China. So it actually, the Beijing Olympics finished on the 20th of February, and he invaded on the 24th of February. What's happened is, obviously, basically the president has been catapulted into a sort of global stage. And he's now a superstar, just come back from Washington. And within that time, he's been given some glorious new weapons, which are going to sort of help with this sort of stuff, called the Patriot batteries. And what they are, they're the mobile surface-to-air missile and anti-ballistic missiles. They can shoot down incoming missiles, which is going to be a fantastic stage, a fantastic weapon for them. The trouble is that we're not going to be available immediately, and these things take training. So we're going to see, whilst they're going to be very powerful for Ukraine, it's going to take a little while before we actually see that happen.
We are seeing that, I mean, the reality of and partly why Ukraine has astounded us all in all of this, is when you take numbers on number. I mean, a lot of the equipment Russia has is actually not great.
Yeah.
But they've got lots of it.
Yeah.
And the numbers on numbers, you would have expected, at least the rest of us would, I don't know about you, Andrew, but you would have almost expected this to have been a walkover for Russia. And we're almost 12 months in. Is there any sign that this could now be coming to an end?
Well, sadly not, and I'll tell you why. Putin's a very proud man. Lots of people in the public stage are very proud. It's humiliating for him that it's gone on so long. It was a surprise, I think, to virtually everybody that Ukraine would hold on for so long. And the world is basically supporting in every possible way and saying, look, this must not finish. The trouble with that, it means that it's going to keep on going, I think, for a little while longer. There's a couple of strategic things that they can do. Obviously, Putin's got the partial mobilisation, which is deeply unpopular, with 200,000 people predicted by the spring to be mobilised in Russia to fight against it. But what's also going to happen is there's the land bridge, which is connecting Crimea. And I think that's an obvious target for Ukraine to basically take out. Because if they can stop that, then strategically they can stop some of the weapons.
Well, there was an attack on that bridge, wasn't there?
Yeah, and there will be further attacks, and I think that absolutely. Because that's the key, sort of, it's the artery, if you like, to the heart of the war. But it's tragic, and I think it's actually tragic on both sides, which we don't talk enough about. Ukrainians don't want it. I can guarantee, actually, most Russians don't want it either. And I speak to people on both sides, and they're devastated. People don't want war, especially in the current side. So I think it's very sad. I do think, I hope that peace will be eventually negotiated, but Ukraine don't want to give in. They don't want to give up their territory on that sort of basis. And Russia don't want to be humiliated. So I think it's going to carry on for a little while.
OK, well, on the basis that it goes on and has the continuing economic impact that it's having, where does that leave us in the UK?
Well, the economy is stinking at the moment, isn't it? You've got the cost of eating versus heating. Interest rates have crippled lots of people with mortgages. So we're going to have more pain on that sort of stuff. More people are going to be pushed into higher tax brackets. So more of your disposable income will basically...
That's a stealth tax.
Yeah, it is.
They've not changed the boundary.
Yeah, and I think also what's happened is the narrative. I can tell you what we also look at is the narrative. So I work with companies to basically predict how the future is going to pan out. And that's both on a political, economic, but also a technology side. And we always say that if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail.
Yeah.
So it's understanding what might happen that does it. So interest rates, you know, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. The pound took a pounding this year, went down to $1.04, the lowest it's been forever. If you remember at one stage, it was $2 not so long ago. I do think that's going to recover, and I think that's going to be helpful. But interest rates and people's mortgages in particular are going to be very, very tricky. So people are going to be looking at shifting around with their mortgages.
In terms of interest rates, though, because what the problem with that is, and it is biting a lot of people, but these are interest rates which are actually historically normal, rather than
absolutely.
historically.
Yeah.
So can we expect them? We can't really expect them to drop down to these abnormally low levels.
Yeah, I think you're right, Stephen. And what happens, I always say that the reason history repeats itself, which everybody says, is because people don't learn the lessons from history. So if you look at what is historically normal and you plan, so rather than rushing out and buying property and getting a mortgage at a very comfortable rate, the difficulty is now, as you say, it's going back to what used to be the norm. And I think you need to look at that sort of side. But there's going to be there's going to be more pain before there is gain.
What about inflation? Because there's been all the... I mean, if you hear from sort of government analysts on the side saying, we expect inflation to start to drop, you know, within the first 6 months or what have you.
Yeah.
Any chance of that?
Well, I do think by the end of the year, and to be optimistic, there will be the green shoots of recovery.
Right.
There are lots of issues to be dealt with, not least, as I say, the war in Ukraine, and you've got, obviously, the other strikes need to be dealt with, and the cost of living, whilst people are negotiating for higher wages. That's an ever-ending cycle. Because, obviously, where do you find the money? There is no money tree, or now no magic wand, I think they're saying, aren't they? change the metaphor, and it sounds a different story, but it is actually the same story. And so we do need to look at both sides. I say in the negotiations, and barristers, I'm a barrister, as you know, they went on strike as well, the criminal barristers, because crime didn't pay. And I think shining a spotlight on the younger people starting in the profession. And most of them were under £12,000 a year is what they were earning when they were dealing with legal aid. So what's going to happen, it's difficult for a lot of people. I always say, look, we're not in the same boat, but we are on the same ocean. And I think understanding what people need and getting those... But it also means looking at efficiencies. So I talk to a lot of people in the NHS. It's not just about money. There's a lot of inefficiency in the NHS.
Well, that does need to be addressed. Look, can we talk tech?
Oh, let's talk tech, because that's
the bit
brilliant.
That excites me.
Well, and you should be excited, because whilst all the doom and gloom has been populating the front pages, there have been seismic advances in tech and in medicine. We've discovered 100% of the sequencing of the human genome.
Right.
And what that means, the human genome is basically the DNA, our DNA. And we can now analyse how to cure diseases. So we're going to see tremendous advances in medicine. You might recall that there was a pig heart was transplanted during the year. That sort of side, which you can genetically engineer to fit within people, is going to improve as well. And all sorts of things on AI. AI also, artificial intelligence, is also basically almost sentient, is what they're saying.
Because that's the thing. I always have a bit of a gripe with this, because we call it AI.
Yes.
It's not actually AI until it's sentient, is it?
Well, and this is what's happened. So Alan Turing, I know you've probably got in your wallet, let's have a look. We've got one over here. Alan Turing, you remember that from the 1950s, fantastic.
The Turing test.
Well, come on. He appears on the back of a £50 note.
Can I say, can I say, and I'm saying this in all honesty, I have never seen a £50 note with Alan Turing. I haven't seen a £50
Have you not?
I haven't seen a £50 note in years.
I've got I've got another one. I've got a printing press at home. It's got to be good. No,
good old Alan Turing, or Bletchley.
But do you remember Bletchley? And he was the differently wired brain because he had autism. But he cracked the Enigma code. You're delighted with. You're far more excited by the money. Yeah. He cracked the Enigma code. But what he also said, he devised what's called the imitation game.
Yeah.
And the imitation game is where you can determine whether computers are sentient by basically setting them a test. If you can fool the general public into thinking that they're talking to a real person, then that's beaten the imitation game. There's a great movie about that sort of side as well.
Is, yeah.
So it's going to happen, I can predict. And Stephen Hawking, he warned about this. He talked about this being the biggest opportunity, but also the biggest existential threat.
Well, there is I mean, to not want to be too gloomy about it, because I love all tech and robots and all the thought of all of this. The problem is, if you get something which is independently sentient and intelligent, that can learn at a much, much, much faster rate than a human being, within a matter of months, they would overtake us.
Well, and that's the rise of the machine. And the science fiction can become science fact. And you're seeing lots of that happening. And there needs to be a stop mechanism. I've spoken about it on this very desk with other people about the stop mechanism. Because at the moment, AI might misunderstand what's going on. If you tell simple AI like Alexa, you turn on, switch on GB News, it will switch it on. It's a very simple instruction. As soon as it starts thinking for itself, it can get it wrong. For example, you say save humanity. Well, one way of saving humanity is to wipe it out. So you save it from itself, it's not going to suffer. End suffering works on that sort of basis. So there needs to be a stop mechanism. We need to be able to control that. But there will be tremendous advances. At the moment, creativity, the creative industries, you can create the Flintstones. Every episode was fed in and a new episode was churned out and it looked identical to the other ones. In music, you're getting people composing. And I know universities this week, schools are also concerned about writing with AI and that sort of side.
Do you know, I love it. I could talk to you all day. What we don't want is HAL 9000 taking over, do we?
Oh, well, there you go. It's all well remembered.
If you're a sci-fi geek like me. Andrew, really good to see you.
Lovely to see you,
Thank you very
Stephen.
much indeed. Look, don't go anywhere, because coming up after 2 o'clock, we're going to be looking at what lies in store for Ukraine. Andrew says it could go on for certainly the rest of the year. I'm afraid that could very well be true, but we'll look at all the details with Colonel Richard Kemp